So, it is the week of Star Wars Celebration 2019, which is the most exciting. A lot of you guys know I am like the biggest Star Wars fan in the world, and in fact, I even attended Star Wars Celebration in 2017, the very last time they actually held the convention, which was in Orlando, Florida. It's the one and only time my girlfriend and I were able to go, and it was the most incredible experience ever. I got to live out a couple of dreams, including sharing the room with George Lucas when he was a part of the 40th anniversary panel, and I also got to meet Hayden Christensen, which was also one of my dreams because Anakin is my favorite character of all time, and I know that there's a lot of jokes and memes out there about it, but I'm someone who thought his performance was awesome. Haters gonna hate. I thought Hayden was the best, and so being able to meet him and tell him that in person really was cool, and it meant a lot to me. Now, what's interesting is, in 2017, when we attended, one of the panels they were holding was the official full reveal of Star Wars Battlefront 2, which at that time was the big new hot Star Wars game that we were all expecting, and EA had an hour-and-a-half long panel, and we were lucky enough to get inside and see that first look live, and it was just the coolest thing. And we all know how the launch of the game turned out to be a complete disaster. They have since improved the game, and I actually very much enjoy playing it. It's actually a pretty decent game. But the launch did not turn out that well. However, at this Star Wars Celebration coming up this week, this coming Saturday actually, they're revealing another game, and that is going to be Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which has been a game with a lot of mystery around it, and also a lot of skepticism and trepidation from the fans, because of course EA is still involved. And even in this year and a half since Star Wars Battlefront 2 and that whole debacle, EA has had plenty of other scandals, Anthem being the most recent one. EA really has not been able to get things to work out properly. There's a lot of problems going on right now there. And so the fact that this other Star Wars game is coming out, we don't know anything about it, and EA is still involved, has people pretty nervous, myself included, because I, for so long, wanted to give EA the benefit of the doubt in a lot of the scandals they've had. And I'm talking about going back like 10 years, not just in the last year. For so long, I always wanted to say, you know, they do some dumb things, but they also make some great games. I mean, they made Dead Space and the Mass Effect games with BioWare. Like, they've done so many good things, I can forgive them for some bad stuff. However, a lot of the stuff that's happened recently, canceling Star Wars games, closing studios like Visceral Games, all the nonsense with Anthem and how they've ruined that game and turned BioWare into just a shell of their former selves, these are things where I'm like, yeah, you guys suck, and you really need to figure it out. However, I'm not really here to focus on the EA part of this. I'm really just here to talk about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and why I am excited for the game, and what I think we might be able to expect from it. Because, like I said, the game's been shrouded in a lot of mystery for a long time. I'm super jealous of anyone who's going to get to attend this panel at Celebration. I wish that we were able to go to Celebration this year, but it just didn't work out. Unfortunately, I have a work trip that week, next week, and it's just going to make things really difficult. But I'm hoping to see some good things from the reveal at the show. I mean, we have to remember that the team behind this game is Respawn, and Respawn has been able to be completely devoid of all controversy the last, you know, whatever, I don't know, decade or so since they existed, and Vince Zampella split from Activision and made Respawn. I mean, they made two really good Titanfall games, and now, as we all know, not too long ago, they launched Apex Legends, and that's been a huge, massive hit. Everyone loves it to death. It's been the only bright spot on EA's track record for the last 5 years. And so, knowing that they're also one of the teams that's still making a Star Wars game is exciting, and what we've heard about this Star Wars game is also very exciting. So my hope with this game is to ignore the EA factor and focus on the awesome story they're telling with the Star Wars universe, and then the awesome team of Respawn who's actually developing it. And putting those two things together is what I'm hope makes a great game. So let's talk a little bit about what we can hopefully expect from this game, and what little bit we actually know about it now. Well, all we really know about this game is they have said that it is supposed to be a story-driven game. I think that we should be able to expect that this is single-player focused, and I know a lot of us don't want to believe that coming from EA, but I really hope that it is. This game needs to be single-player focused. This needs to be story-driven because it's what they have not succeeded with their Star Wars license over the past almost 6 years since they've had it and released only 2 very average games. So we know it's supposed to take place right after the end of Revenge of the Sith, which is also right after Order 66 happens, and you apparently play as a Jedi who is trying to escape from the newly formed Empire. You survived the initial wave of Order 66, and now you're trying to run away and basically escape and try to figure out what the hell's going on and to survive and maybe try to stop Sidious, Palpatine and the Empire, and just kind of do that whole thing. And that's a very exciting idea to me because, one, Revenge of the Sith is my second favorite Star Wars movie. Two, Order 66 is one of the most badass and awesome things that was ever put into a movie. It's seriously one of my favorite events from the Star Wars universe. And three, I love the idea of it building off of what we were always told by Obi-Wan in A New Hope about Darth Vader being the person who actually had to hunt down and destroy the Jedi. And so what we learned once the prequel trilogy ended and Order 66 happens is that, okay, Darth Vader just became Darth Vader. Order 66 wiped out the Jedi. And so now, in this gap between the end of Episode 3 and the beginning of Episode 4, we can assume that that will be part of this time period where Darth Vader is hunting down all of the Jedi that weren't killed and destroyed in Order 66. That's a 19-year gap. And while we did have Solo and Rogue One, which are movies that kind of, take place and fill in some of the gaps of that 19-year gap, they don't really touch on the important stuff or the big stuff. They don't really achieve a lot of what I think a lot of us would want out of storytelling in that gap. The idea of this game very much could be that. I assume you're playing a Jedi who's probably trying to run away from Darth Vader, or at least Darth Vader hunting down Jedi is going to be some sort of part of this game or part of the story. Maybe even on the periphery of the main story is this concept that Vader is out there trying to do that stuff. And if we see Vader, or maybe even have a confrontation with Vader, that would be incredible. That would be the Star Wars game we've been waiting for. Then, of course, we get into the other big mysteries about this game, which is, what is it going to play like? What is it going to look like? What genre of game is it going to be? And so here's the thing. One of the main things I think about when I think about this game, and I probably expect we might see, is I'm thinking in a lot of ways it might be the stylistic successor to Star Wars 1313, which is a very famous Star Wars game introduced 6-7 years ago, which looked great. Everyone was excited for it. This was during the Lucas era when this thing first started, and everyone was pumped. And it went away. It got canceled. It got scrapped by LucasArts, and now continued by here in the Disney era, and it was a very tragic loss. But I would have to think, after all this time and knowing that we have a story-focused Star Wars game finally coming, 6 years later or whatever, I have a feeling that what Star Wars 1313 was very likely could have turned into what Jedi Fallen Order is. I mean, 1313 was supposed to focus more on a bounty hunter. You weren't actually playing as a Jedi character or a Force-using character, at least as far as we know. And in the demo footage that does exist, which you're actually watching here in this game, you can kind of see, I mean, the whole thing takes place on Coruscant, or at least is focused on Coruscant, because 1313 is one of the levels on Coruscant, and that's where this demo footage takes place. And that's where, the Jedi Temple is, and that's where a lot of crazy Jedi-related stuff happened, obviously, throughout the millennia. So what if a lot of this game takes place, Jedi Fallen Order I should say, takes place on Coruscant, or you begin the game on Coruscant, or you end the game on Coruscant, or you visit it in some part? And so what if they took a lot of what they built for 1313 and the idea of the gameplay mechanics and turned it into this Jedi Fallen Order game? I have a very strong suspicion that what we might see in some ways could echo 1313. Now, part of this, though, is how the game is played. When you think that 1313, essentially what we saw from that was a third-person action shooter kind of game. We also know that Respawn is known really for making first-person games. There are 3 games that they've made, both Titanfall games and then Apex Legends. Those are all first-person shooters, and they're incredible first-person shooters. That is Vince Zampella's background, because he worked on Call of Duty when he worked with Activision. And that actually makes me think of other first-person Star Wars games, like the Star Wars Jedi Knight games, which played both first and third-person in some sections. Dark Forces, Dark Forces 2, Jedi Outcast, Jedi Academy. There's a lot of first-person play throughout that series of games. There's also Star Wars Republic Commando that came out for the original Xbox, and I think also the PC. Really great game, taking place during the Clone War era. And so we've kind of seen the precedents for first-person Star Wars action as well. And so, what can we expect from this game? It's tough to say. My overall prediction is actually not going to be a first-person game primarily. I feel like this is going to be a game that does focus on third-person. I think something more akin to what Star Wars 1313 was, even if what we see doesn't make us think of 1313, even if we learned that 1313 didn't get turned into Jedi Fallen Order, I still think that what we're probably going to see from the gameplay is something more reminiscent to that. And that would be cool, man, because even what 1313 was doing, and what I would hope Jedi Fallen Order might do, is something that was very much like an Uncharted experience. I mean, people compared 1313, that footage, to Uncharted forever, and I 100% agree with that. Again, you've been watching it here in this video. I'm sure that you can see in that little action section of gameplay, that is like Uncharted on Coruscant. It's Uncharted Star Wars. And, you know, having to compare a game to another series, some people might see that as a negative. I don't really mind, because I think Uncharted is amazing, and I think that's a great way to make a Star Wars game and tell a Star Wars story. So a first-person option is always possible. The game might be first-person completely. It might be first-person or third-person optional. But I really feel like we're going to see something that just pretty much focuses on the third person, and that makes me super, super excited. The other main thing I think we can expect is an understanding of how this will fit into the lore and the new canon of Star Wars, you know, ever since the Disney era. And you know, it's interesting. Like, if you think about what the story is supposed to be, playing as a Jedi Knight, escaping Order 66, and possibly avoiding Darth Vader. That's more my theory, but I feel pretty good about it, that you're going to be avoiding Darth Vader. I feel like a lot of the story could kind of retcon the events, or retell some of the events that were initially told in the two Force Unleashed games. And I'm somebody, as a Star Wars fan, that really didn't care for the Force Unleashed games. I mean, I thought they were just such a disappointment. They weren't, like, terrible. They just were a wasted opportunity. I loved the idea of learning who Darth Vader's apprentice was, but I didn't really like how they went about it. And I love the actor Sam Witwer who played him, but I don't think that that character really turned out to be somebody that I believed would be Darth Vader's apprentice. And I also didn't like that they named him Starkiller. I thought that that was stupid because of what the name Starkiller is. And it's also why I hate the fact that Starkiller Base in Episode 7 is called Starkiller Base. I think that was also stupid. So that stuff really just clashed with me. And the way the first game ended, they gave you multiple branching endings. And a lot of them didn't fit within the canon. And it just blew my mind. Like, I was so upset about the way my game ended. I was like, you can't do that. That's not how the canon of the stories work. Like, it totally contradicted all of the other movies that came after those games. So I really didn't like the Force Unleashed games, if you can't tell. But the idea, the foundation was solid, of telling a story of Darth Vader's apprentice helping him go and hunt down and kill the Jedi. And this game seems like it's going to touch on the same events in the same part of the story. And so I would think that it's going to retell a lot of that lore. And let's be real here. When we think about Star Wars, when we think about a new movie, or when we think about a new video game in this case, one of the things we think about is the story. It is the lore. How will it fit into the canon? In the Star Wars universe in particular, that stuff really, really matters. And this game, if they're going to try to do something substantial, something that isn't just a multiplayer waste of time like the Battlefront stuff that has no real substance to it, then it's got to fit into the canon in an interesting way. It can't be a disappointment the way the Force Unleashed games were. Like, I'm going to be really upset if we get something that's like that and doesn't really feel like it belongs in the story. Although, to be fair, if the gameplay is great, it would make it easier for me to forgive it. But hopefully it's just a marriage of both great gameplay and great story that fits into the lore and makes sense and actually adds something to the lore and adds something to the characters. I mean, you're going to pick up at the end of one of the greatest events in the Star Wars saga, Order 66, when the Jedi were at the height of their power and this is the beginning of their fall. I mean, you gotta deliver, man. That is the coolest idea. I can't get over how great the idea is. And I'm hoping that we just get something that really delivers and feels justified as being a part of the Star Wars story. But for now, it's a mystery, man, and all we can do is just wait and see what happens at this panel this Saturday. It's going to be really cool. I can't wait to see what they're going to show. I want to believe. I am cautiously optimistic. Cautious because EA is involved. But I'm optimistic because I'm a Star Wars fan, man. I can't help it. It's in my nature. It's in my DNA. and I don't apologize for it. I want this game to be good. I believe there's a chance it could be good. Respawn is involved, so I want to believe in Respawn to make a good game, and the little bit of stuff they told us about the story and what they're doing, I want to believe they're going to focus on the right stuff, not multiplayer loot box microtransactions garbage like EA likes to put into their games. So EA, please don't screw this game up for the rest of us, and Respawn, just make a kick-ass game, man. I want to believe in you guys. I do believe in Respawn. I think that they've done an amazing job so far, and I hope that it continues here. EA really screwed up BioWare's Anthem, and I'm going to be just freaking so upset if they screw up Respawn's Star Wars game after the 2 Battlefront games they've made. Like, I'm going to have a lot to say, man. You guys are going to get quite the rant video out of me. But either way, I'll cover the game again once the panel happens this Saturday and we've actually seen the game, and I'll just discuss it a little bit further at that time. But for now, tell me what you think. Are you excited, or are you just too nervous about EA's involvement to even be excited, and you're just probably not even going to give it a chance? Whatever you think. I know EA sucks, so I totally get it if that's where you're coming from. But discuss it below. I want to hear what you guys actually have to say about this upcoming game. So that's it. This video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.